Good morning and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. Mayor Toni Hart makes New Haven tick morning and night. She's here in the WNHH studio for her weekly Mayor Monday checkup on what she and we have been up to in the Elm City. It's her second radio interview day that I know of. You might have been on Tom Joyner, I don't know.
No, I wasn't.
Okay. And welcome, Mayor Hart.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Richard Furlow, now you're the majority leader, correct? Of the Board of Alders, Beaver Hills Alder, Reverend, right?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, sir. He's on, too, with our new practice of having someone who works with Mayor Hart talk about a project they do together in the second segment of the show, though they're welcome to participate all throughout. And if you have a question for the mayor of Richard Furlow, feel free to pop it to us via Facebook Live. Go to the New Haven Independent Facebook page, and you'll see the video right there. And thanks to Gateway Community College and Birch and Moses PC for providing financial support for today's program. Did you stay cool this weekend, Mayor Hart?
No.
You didn't? You didn't just stay in a den with AC on and watch old movies or anything like that?
Oh, no. I was out and about.
Wait, oh, my gosh. You're running a city and running for mayor? And things like that? Well, you know, some people had AC in New Hallville who weren't going to have it when the weekend started. Apparently, you had something to do with that, right? Air conditioning.
Well, yeah. We worked with Kathy Townsend, who operates our Burn Grant in New Hallville, and she had this really great idea of going to some of the places that sell air conditioners, and so we were able to get donations, and we were able to get about 70 air conditioners.
Did you go mostly the elderly complex there off Gem Street, or where were you?
We went all over. We asked people who needed them, and
you were physically part of that.
Well, actually, it was Kathy Townsend.
So, but good job.
Yeah, no, I think it was good.
You know, you really do appreciate AC on a weekend like this. I know I did.
Yeah.
And I will editorialize. There were people who did find a way to criticize you for this.
Oh, really?
Like some of our commenters, just a little bit cranky people.
Well,
they said, "Well, why didn't I get a air conditioner?" I think that's pretty sick. I give you total props, and I'll editorialize. Way to go, keeping people cool.
Well, I think one of the things that we learned is that we all know how dangerous the snow and cold can be, but the heat is actually more dangerous, especially for elderly children.
Why is that?
Breathing, and people can actually die more often, become dehydrated.
And you did activate centers around the city.
Right.
Did people call off? Did people go to those?
I'm assuming that they did, particularly the library on Saturday.
Yes, yeah. The library has become such an interesting center that way.
Right.
I think we do it best, the way the library is for everybody. The way it has interesting stuff to draw people of all walks of life, and they do find a way to deal with a challenging situation of having a place for homeless people to go.
No, I think so. So we did our best to make sure that people were cool, especially those who were the most vulnerable.
And with climate change, they're saying, there have been a lot of articles recently, I don't know if you see these, Richard, about how we're going to have a lot more heat waves. And New Haven's had it kind of better. We have a little bit of a cooler and damper climate than some other places, but record-setting heat many more days a year. Other places, France had 114 degrees.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
But even in American cities, they had heat waves this summer. I wonder if we've dodged a bullet for this point. I mean, this was practice this weekend.
Well, I actually looked at the weather report, and it looks like it's going to be cool tomorrow because we're going to have a lot of thunderstorms this afternoon and tonight. So that should cool things down, but it's going to get hot again after tomorrow.
Don't you love to be inside in a thunderstorm as long as you don't feel anyone else is having their electricity knocked out or something? The way to hear the fury of nature.
And I like to look out the window. I think it's beautiful.
Lightning.
Actually. Yeah.
As long as it doesn't strike you.
Right.
Well, maybe getting struck by lightning. But speaking of AC, that also stands for Assistant Chief. This weekend, you also had an AC experience Friday night at the Yale Art Gallery. You swore in 3 Assistant Chiefs, Renee Dominguez, Carl Jacobson, and Herb Sharp. Right. The last of the existing ACs is gone. Rachel Kane has become the latest in about 4,000 assistant chiefs who've gone to work for the state's attorney's office at this point.
It seems all go there.
I think you have to. I think it's a law at this point. You serve assistant chief or chief, and then you go work for the state's attorney, which is interesting. You bring your knowledge to New Haven, and you still go out at 3 a.m. So tell me about that. How was that ceremony, and what does it mean for New Haven with this new team?
Well, it was really a beautiful ceremony. It was in the Yale Art Gallery. It's a beautiful space. And, I think that what made it so nice is that each of them had their families pin their new badge on them. And then we heard a lot about them from Chief Reyes, and then they got to speak themselves and talk about what motivates them to be to serve. And it was
And you
really
do always learn something new about someone when you hear about
Yeah.
that. Like, I didn't know that Renee Dominguez had worked in the Valley and then came here and that kind of
right.
stuff.
Yeah, and she met her husband there. It was really kind of interesting. And so I thought it gave us insight, but also the words that were provided by the chief as to why he thought that they should elevate to that leadership. I thought that was good as well, and I was really impressed with the decisions that he made for the three of
And he's
them.
really creating a team in his image because people have different approaches to policing. Those three are
Right.
definitely on a page with Antonio Reyes.
Mhm.
And as we said, so I won't take up a lot of time this time. We've talked about how you're going from within. New Haven's developing its talent. And
And I think that all of the officers that are at the officer level really need to know that if they work hard and they have the goal to do this, that they can move through the ranks and become chief one day.
I learned something new about Tony Harp today. I was editing a story about your forum yesterday at the Mayoral Forum,
Mm-hmm.
and I never knew that you were a Sunday school teacher at Varick.
Yeah.
It was very humorous. Everyone was asked to say something nice about their opponents. It was my favorite permanent question now in debates. When we used to ask it in the 80s, it was,
Mhm.
look, you're asking something nice, and every candidate was caught by surprise. Now, I'm sure you and every candidate is trained to say, okay, be ready for the nice thing you're going to say. They're going to make you say about your opponent. But you said that Seth Poole was your student at Sunday school at Varick. I knew nothing about this. Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, when I was really almost right out of graduate school. I attended Varick, newly married.
Before the Renaissance of Varick.
Yeah, pretty much before. It was like the old-fashioned Varick reminded me of my church in Salt Lake City, and they asked me. I think it was actually Seth's grandmother, Mrs. Poole, who asked me if I would teach Sunday school.
And they have nothing to do with the Pools in West River, even though he lives in West River. Jerry and
No, they're not
Joyce?
related. Yeah,
Is
I
that
think
right?
Jerry's from Waterbury. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So they asked you when you were just out of grad school and you were working for the city, right?
I work for the city.
And weren't you a
and
young mom at the time?
I was a young mom.
You had time to teach Sunday school.
Oh yeah, I just thought it was kind of a fun way to connect with community.
And how long did you do that?
Oh, I don't know, maybe for a year and a half.
And
yeah.
what kind of Sunday school teacher were you? Mean, strict, or were you like really fun and play around? Did you give them candy? Did you teach them like one biblical parable? Like what was your
Oh,
approach
no,
to
I
being?
mean, I kind of was in between.
I knew you weren't mean. Yeah.
I wasn't really
Just teasing
mean,
you.
but I made it fun. I hope. I tried to make sure that the lessons connected to real life, and I wanted them to tell me stories in their life that related to the stories that we were learning about.
And you remembered that Seth Poole was one of your students.
Yeah, he and his brother.
What was he
yeah.
like?
He was a nice little boy.
Okay, now he's running against you for mayor. How
Yeah.
does it feel that your former Sunday school student is running against you?
I think people run against you. It's nice to see that he's active. He's a developer, maybe with a small d, and he's done a lot of work in youth development. So he brings the perspective that I think is an important.
He was
one.
on here on radio doing an
Mhm.
in-depth interview, and I will say I was struck by he did not have anything bad to say about anybody.
Yeah,
He did not take shots at you. He said there's
Mhm.
some things I disagree with her about, and he was willing to say what he agreed with you about. He didn't,
Okay.
because this is my bugaboo. He didn't take a shot at you for going to China. He's been to China.
Mhm.
He studied Chinese. He said, although now with the trade war under Trump, now China's just dropped 90% of its investment in the U.S.
I know. Yeah.
But I mean, you brought company here. I mean, like he said, it makes a lot of sense to go to China.
Right.
And so I think he's going to be I could be wrong because I'm a la la, kumbaya, rosy colored glasses type of guy. But I
Mhm.
think it's going to be a very positive general election with him.
I think that he will.
Because he
try
had
to
you
be.
as a Sunday school teacher. And you said, Seth, don't do Lashon Hara, which is Hebrew for evil tongue, evil speech against people. Look for the best in them, right? Didn't you teach him that?
Well, I think those are the principles that are taught. I don't know that I
Do you notice the passive voice, the principles that are taught? Richard Furley, you're a reverend. Do you teach Sunday school?
I have. I'm actually director.
And I'm going to ask you to get so close to that mic, you're almost touching it and maybe move it towards you. Where were you the director of Sunday school?
Well, I was with Church of God, the Cleveland, Tennessee denomination, and I served for about 10 years as director for Sunday school, which was about 54 churches.
And maybe Mayor Harp can chime in on this too, because I remember I went to a Sunday school version of Judaism when I was a kid. I hated it because I couldn't sit still in the classroom. It's tough for the kids. What is the approach to make it a meaningful experience and deal with that fact The kids are spilkus. They're jumping out of their pants all the time. You know, it's hard for them to sit still. They're in school all day and stuff, or during the week. What is the approach to Sunday school? What is the goal of how you try to impart something that strengthens their soul?
Well, I think it's like what the mayor said. It has to be relevant to real life. And so when you capture children's attention, and Sunday schools from children to adults, usually there's some form of teaching, and so it has to be relevant to what people are experiencing. As with any religion, you try to make God relevant to real life. That's what makes Sunday school
And
come
she
alive.
just talked about also about having them speak about their own experiences.
Right.
Does that ring a bell?
Of course. I mean, if you can't relate to where people are in life, then you really don't have much to say to them that they would want to hear.
Interesting. But you can relate to where we are in life right now, which is Mayor Monday, WNHH-FM, 103.5, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. We're here with the crew, the Richard Furlow and Mayor Tony Harp. Johnny Velez says, God bless you, borough follower. And Bob McCormick has a question. What are we going to do? Oh, this is very interesting. About the older model police cars after one caught fire Saturday. Bob really keeps his finger on the pulse, you know? I already forgot about that car catching fire.
Well, you know, one of the things, you know,
Thank you, Bob.
our cars go 24 hours a day. So they are going, and they literally get worn out really quickly. And one of the things that I'm hoping that we'll do is, one, replace all the ones. I heard from one of the officers that they had once put stapled license plates in the floor of.
Right. We had the picture in the Independent a couple of years ago when they were driving around with floor, and the floor had a big hole in it, right?
Right. And, you know, puddles and all of that don't really work together. So ultimately, I hope that we get, that we start using more of the trucks instead of the Chargers, a four-wheel drive. Right now, most of our sergeants have those, but I would like to see all of our cars be changed to that type of car.
And over the weekend, too, there were 2 losses. One was directly in your life, and I was wondering if a second one was. So Andy Wolf was our director of culture and tourism. You gave a wonderful talk at his funeral. I was there at the Shore Funeral Home. You really talked personally about your relationship with him and your family and what he brought to the city. And I guess you want to say anything more about that? Or you want me to move on to the second person?
Mean, look, I met Andy almost 20 years ago.
Out in Los Angeles, Democratic National Convention.
He was such a warm and genuine human being. And it was right at the time that my daughter was going into residency out in Los Angeles at USC. And really didn't know anybody much in the LA area. And so I asked Andy if he would look out for her. And she was there then, so she had met him because she'd gone to the DNC with me. And
that's fun, going with Mom to the
it was fun. And so she got to meet him. And then when she went out to look for an apartment, he helped her find an apartment. And then, you know, every now and then, he would call her up and just invite her out for dinner.
What a mensch.
You know, it's such a great guy. And he maintained contact with her and with me. And he went to China. The business that he had at that particular time, he was back and forth in China. And I used to, this is something you didn't know too, but I used to make jewelry. And, you know, cloisonné is a form of a bead that is made in China. And so I asked him if he would look for some. You know, I would pay him when he got back. And, you know, he found some cloisonné for me. And, you know, the reason that it sticks out in my mind now is when I went to China, I realized that would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. And I thought, how genuinely kind and generous this
you know,
human
he had
being
so many
was,
relationships like that with people. Andy just touched them. I know he did with me, something he could connect with it. And then he got everyone interested in New Haven. You brought him back to do a really vibrant arts program with no money. He did have an assistant, but every month he told me, I remember he got here, he said, she told me I got to do something big every month and I don't get a cent. And you got all the, you know, all these other groups in town to send people to perform, put money behind it. And, you know, whether it's the opera thing we got going, or the Great Jazz Festival, the birthday party every year, the Hometown Heroes, really nice stuff.
Yeah.
Richard, did you have much contact with Andy Wolf?
Yeah, we talked together a lot. I was doing some research on New Haven for the religious piece because we have the Green and the history of the Ninth Square with the churches that are there. But everyone in life, everyone that you meet has value and has purpose. And then you meet someone like Andy, who
Purpose
just
times
has
10.
so much passion that they just become
Yeah, he did.
irreplaceable. Someone that just touches you, and he was just an unforgettable person.
And of course, everyone on the sidewalk, it was Overflow Crow I was talking about. So
Yeah.
John Alston, the fire chief, said, I used to go to his office and we sang show tunes together. Bob, okay, we had some other comments that unfortunately I can't read on the screen right now, but one says furlough for mayor 2022. Does that mean you're running only one more
Well, you
term?
never know.
You're not saying how many more terms you're running, Mayor Harp? Okay.
So anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And Daniel Hunt says, does Mayor Hart plan on attending future community walk events with myself and Chief Reyes?
Absolutely. I'd love to walk the community.
He got that in. All right. Pastor Arlene Henry said, good morning, everyone. Thank you. Cam Cooper, Andy, loved and respected. The second high-profile death was a national one out of New Haven. Caesar Pelli, the architect,
Right.
came here
yeah.
in the 70s to run the Yale Architecture School and then became worldwide famous for the big towers he designed everywhere, made of glass.
Mm-hmm.
He had kind of a whimsy to him. Very down-to-earth guy, I thought. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know him or anything, but I never talked to him or something. He just seemed like he had his office on Chapel Street while he got world famous, had a bunch of cool architects working here. And so you came to New Haven, correct, in the 70s to go to the architecture school, right? But that was before he took it over, right?
I think it was before he took it over.
Did
He
you ever have
came-
any contact with him?
The last time that I had contact with him was when we were looking at and walking through the new graduate housing that is now on Broadway. And
Oh, the new building that's next to that. There used to be a parking lot next to Tyco.
right. And so Bruce Alexander and he and I walked through to sort of help me understand how that building would work and look. And he was just.
Did he design them?
I think he was involved in the planning for it.
Really? He
Yeah.
was doing a 5-story building on Elm Street still at the end of his
Yeah.
life.
At the end, yeah. And he was, and honestly, he didn't look his age, which was good. And he had a great sense of humor and was highly, I don't know. Well, of course, he was highly regarded and respected by Bruce, and he just, so it was a really good experience.
in his
to
obit
actually
at the
meet him.
Times, which I thought was good, made the front page.
Yeah.
And they were talking about his ability to laugh at himself and also criticize himself. Because, that was a bold era of the 60s and 70s. He did MoMA, Museum of Modern Art in New York, and they
Mhm.
redid part of it. He said he thought there was a little bit of an extent to which, at least in one case, he was having fun designing and not thinking enough about the impact of the people
Mhm.
he was designing for. And which was a big lesson in the 50s and 60s, I think, but okay. Daniel Hunt, does the mayor know why the Board of Ed meeting scheduled for tonight was canceled?
I'm really not aware. I'm gonna check it out though.
Cam wrote, Andy, loved and respected. Thanks a lot. So that were your thoughts on Caesar Pelli. He left an imprint. He did it out in New Haven, and we have a lot of firms now doing. We have one that's doing the new Google headquarters. We have firms who do a lot of big work around the country.
Oh yes, and and he also gave us Aisha Woods, who is the
He
head
did?
of yes.
She's doing a good job.
She's
I
doing
like
a great
her.
job, yeah. And so I know she worked with him and for him, and now we get the value of all that experience.
I heard an interesting comment. This, all the noise in the media and everything about the national news sometimes, but there was a pretty good quote I heard. It's time for the Trump administration to stop its racist, hateful attacks on people in this country who look different, speak another language, or have different cultural, religious, or sexual preferences. The chanting in North Carolina is dangerous evidence of the hate and fear that are among the worst characteristics of human nature and must be stopped. On the one hand, Trump Republicans want people who are different to go back to where they came from, quote unquote, but when those facing the same hateful persecution in their countries try and come here, children are separated from their parents, desperate people are locked up, and otherwise innocent victims are indiscriminately criminalized. Time for Americans to come together, condemn this administration, and work to bring the best in one another. Instead, those familiar words to you?
Yes, very yes.
Well,
And honestly,
you wrote that.
right. I'm really troubled by what he's doing to our country. And, it was interesting. I read something earlier today that, we really can't call something racism, and yet our president can aggravate racism among people. I mean, it's just.
And of course, I was looking at the anti-Semitic angle because we all look at our own little worlds.
Mm-hmm.
President Trump, who abetted anti-Semites, and I believe he's an anti-Semite, Kevin McCarthy, leader in the House, Republican leader, has a history of really anti-Semitic statements. Last week, Sebastian Gorka invited to the White House by Trump, who was a member of a Nazi organization in Hungary, And they're attacking these women for being anti-Semitic. One, because she, God forbid, is a Palestinian and gets to stand up and give her side. So what I'm wondering is, does it work? Because in some ways there's an opportunity, right? So Trump was trying to increase divisions within the Democratic Party where they don't agree, and where Nancy Pelosi was at war with the squad, the people who's talking about here, the 4 congresswomen. Does this give you a chance? Because I think there's so many issues in which Democrats can say yes rather than either or. Like, do you want to go to Medicare for all? Do you want to go gradually, and get more people on for time? Yes, because the real question is, do you want more people covered or not through some government action? And similarly, can women who are in the House of Representatives, who represent 2 different generations and both stand up to Trump, can they talk about what they don't disagree with, but be united in the face of that? Or is this just temporary and they go back to the squabbling?
Well, I think that our country depends upon them to be able to do that.
Because most people who watch it, you don't really have to choose between Nancy Pelosi and the squad. Nancy Pelosi has stood up to Trump like nobody else in the whole country, and she has a job about keeping a caucus together.
Right.
And these younger women are bringing voices that weren't heard and representing people who weren't represented, and they're influencing the debate. I don't see why that has to be, again, kumbaya. I don't see why that has to be a fight.
I don't think it is a fight, and I think that what makes it more of a fight is it's Trump, and then sort of like unleashing all of this hate and racism, and it's despicable for a leader to do that.
All right, and we're talking about that on Mayor Monday with Mayor Tony Harp and Majority Leader of the Border Alders, Richard Furlow. And we're going to dial it back from these global issues and talk about 3 letters, the mysterious letters RAC, which is the way that we TCB in New Haven. The RAC, which I think
it sounds like a song. I think you can do a little rap with that, Paul.
we could take a Aretha Franklin's respect and work on that. But the reason I'm using the acronym, because I do think it has the most boring official name I know, but yet a really interesting and important mission. RAC being Resource Allocation Committee, correct?
Yes.
And it's basically the way we stop fighting about where we fix potholes and sidewalks, the way we stop worrying about whether there's conspiracies to give certain neighborhoods help and not others. And it gets the alders, who are the frontline people from each neighborhood, in a room and deciding what's best for the whole city about how we go about fixing potholes and fixing sidewalks. Am I correct about that, Richard?
Well, first it starts with the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And so the administration and the alders get together. We have our deliberation, a very grueling public process. And then from that process, the infrastructure, our finances are allocated to the infrastructure. So it's not the full board. So this subcommittee was developed in 2012 by ordinance. It is a subcommittee, an administrative committee that consists of the engineering department, public works, and 2 alders.
Oh, only 2?
Yes.
So how do you get the input of the whole city? Oh, because you have them. Don't you have people from different neighborhoods say where the problems are?
Right. So we have 2 processes. One process is through SeeClickFix. The other process is directly to the alders. We're the ones that are on the ground. We're the ones that get the most phone calls.
Especially about sidewalks and potholes, correct?
Especially, well,
and that's what you signed up for, Richard.
Sidewalks. Absolutely. This is a lot of fun.
Every time someone goes into a pothole, I'm calling Richard Furlow.
That's right.
I don't even care if it's Ward 27.
And I answer the phone. That's right. And but it's street paving, sidewalks, trees, tree trimming, stump removal.
And tree trimming, you can get it both ways, right? Because I've been to people who are upset trees going to fall in their house. When are you going to take it down? Then people say, how can you take down this tree even though it's about to fall down? Because it's beautiful and we want to keep it there, right?
Right. It's a process of removing a tree. It has to be noticed for a certain amount of days. And then once it's noticed, if no one complains, then the tree is removed.
So the RAC was set up, am I correct, as a way to intelligently, with a lot of people's voices and with data, figure out which streets get paved, which potholes fixed, which sidewalks fixed.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I should say this. Maybe I will.
Yeah, just between us.
But but before this administration, there wasn't a fair process of getting streets and sidewalks done, and so this ordinance was created in order to make sure that there was equity across the board. A process where everything is being brought together throughout the whole city and then being prioritized.
Andrew Downer says, I'm still waiting for your call back. So she gave a little poke at you. Thanks for your message. Okay.
And so through this process, the whole city is being addressed, not just certain sections of the city. And streets are prioritized according to how bad they are. and then targeted for improvement, uh, being
And how do
done
we
over
decide? Now,
again.
Richard, on the one hand, how do we decide what's needed most, and how do we make sure all neighborhoods get something?
Well, it's done by this is through the engineering department and through public works. So, say that we're looking at sidewalks. If you live on a dead end street and you have a crack in your sidewalk, that's not necessarily a number one priority to get that sidewalk fixed.
Oh, because not as many people walk. through
Right.
that
So
area.
we're looking at bus stops,
Okay.
walkability, where the street is located, and so all that plays a determining factor. If it's by a school, all this is important for the priority.
And there's not enough money to go around, right? Like you can't fix every broken sidewalk. You can't pave every street.
This is only because you haven't opened up your wallet, Paul.
And isn't it also true that technically I'm supposed to fix my own sidewalk, or is that not true?
That is true by ordinance.
It's like if someone, and they don't usually sue the homeowner, but you
Right.
guys don't get sued if someone trips on a sidewalk, correct? Because that's the owner's. Right.
Well, it is a tremendous courtesy that the city is extending to even do the sidewalks because it is 100% the responsibility of the homeowner. We did have a program several years ago that was 50-50.
And it didn't work, right? Because you never could collect that 50, right?
Right.
And just so I can say that you guys are doing your job right and there's no favoritism. The
there
biggest,
isn't favoritism.
the biggest
it's
tree,
done across the whole city.
that's what I'm saying. The biggest tree in my neighborhood, root that's popping a sidewalk, is right in front of my alder's house. So he did not get jumped to the front of the line.
And it's amazing because when we're looking at things, and there are some things that needed to be done on my street, and I said, please do my street last. I know that my neighbors are going to be
Yeah.
upset about that. I
And
said,
where does the
"But
money
it's-
come from? I don't know if you want to talk about that, Mayor Harp. When we pave streets, when we fix sidewalks, do we bond it? Do we get it from the state? Does it come from the general fund?
So some of it is
It's
bonding.
yeah, some of it's bonding. It's a combination. There's a grant that we get. LOSUP, I think, is a grant that we get from the state, and so we use some of that for roads and sidewalks. We use some out of our bonding dollars, and
CDBG money.
CDBG.
That's
so we,
Connecticut. That's block grant, community block grant development.
yeah, community block grant.
And how much do we need, and how much do we spend?
Well, I know I put $1 million extra dollars into sidewalks when I became mayor, and the board agreed to it, right?
Absolutely. So it's about $2 million in spending.
And do you think we would, if we had $30 million, would it do the trick? I mean, we're not going to have $30 million.
Well, I think if we had $30 million, we would. It might be a really smart thing to do if we could afford the borrowing, because I think they hold up for about how long, Richard? I think at least maybe 10, 15 years.
Doesn't it depend on the sidewalk? On my block, they did fix a sidewalk near me, and then it popped up within 2 years because the tree is so big and a healthy
Ah.
tree that the root pops it up again. I don't mean to disagree with you. I
Oh,
think it
no,
is a great
no.
investment.
Well, Parks has an excellent program that they started maybe a year ago, maybe it was 2 years now, where they're doing right tree in the right place.
Right.
And so years ago, there was all these elm trees and trees planted in the wrong place that are now ripping up the sidewalks. And so
Mhm.
Becky Bombero created this policy that through working with URI, that they will begin to.
Urban Resource Institute was
Right.
really planting a lot of trees, which when I've been thinking about the heat wave this summer,
Mhm.
that is a big deal. Cities need to plant a lot of trees.
Right.
I was thinking, we
Mhm.
got the crew. We
Right.
do it.
And
We
You,
got
you
to
know what lessens the use of sidewalks is when people park their cars on them.
That too. And the
Really?
life of sidewalks,
Right.
yes.
Wow. So we got at Ward 27 as tree stumps that need to be removed and the trees need trimming. Is there money for trimming? Erica Williams, the stump that is growing like a tree again.
I know Erica Williams,
Okay.
and we're on it.
All right, we're
Right.
on it. Now, what percentage of the calls you get as an alder, Richard, have to do with sidewalks, tree trimming, paving?
But there's a tree in front of everyone's house, and
And it's a problem I love to have.
yeah,
I
and
love that we have these beautiful
Oh,
trees
it's
in New Haven.
absolutely beautiful.
They love to
Absolutely
look
beautiful.
at in the storms. They keep us
Yep.
cool. Yeah.
But some are getting older. They don't last forever,
Although
unfortunately.
Ronald Reagan said they cause pollution, so I'm.
Is that what he
Trees?
said?
Don't you remember that trees cause pollution?
Okay.
Come on, we're from the Reagan era. your press person remembers that one. And ketchup's a vegetable. Okay,
But what we try to do is we try to address it before
they make it up.
it becomes a problem for the residents. So when I'm talking to residents or constituents, I know the tree. I say, I see this tree. It's in front of the house, and I'm going to mark it down. We know that it needs to be trimmed. So I think that it's important to be proactive to let people know that we're not ignoring it. We see the sidewalk, we see the street. It is being prioritized. It's in the queue, and just keep people aware of what's going to be happening.
Mayor Harp, how about you? Do you hear a different even though you hear some of the same things every alder hears, do you get a different kind of frequency when people talk to you because you run the whole city, or do you hear more about sidewalks and trees and paving than you hear about anything else?
I do. I hear about, well, I hear about everything, but I do hear a lot about sidewalks, um, and potholes, and I hear a lot about speed humps. A lot of neighborhoods
That's
want them.
traffic calming. That's a little different,
It's
right?
a little different, but it's the same thing. But those
Everybody
are
wants them because everyone wants some relief, even though it's kind of hard to figure out what works best and what has unintended consequences.
exactly. So those are the things that I hear about the most. And I'll tell you, there's some neighborhoods because um, on the tree trimming, it's really an important thing to do, especially as we go into the fall and the winter, because those beautiful trees can become very dangerous when we have storms.
Remember the freak Halloween storm? I don't know if you were mayor yet. I think you weren't.
I
think it was
wasn't, but I
2011.
remember it. It was,
And how heavy those trees were with snow and ice when they
Yeah.
hadn't yet shed their leaves.
yeah,
That was bizarre.
It's
It
important
was.
to know too that with the tree trimming, it can only be done certain times of year. And so if you trim a tree at the wrong time, then the
Oh.
tree will die.
Oh,
And so we have a small window, usually in the fall, that certain types of trees can be trimmed. And the queue, there are 600 trees that are added each year. We have about 3,600 now that are due for trimming or removal.
wow.
That Parks is working on that backlog, but there are 600 each year that are added to that queue.
Wow, that's a
We
long
have
queue.
a lot of trees in New
A
Haven.
lot of trees in New Haven. I love that about New Haven. The Doug Ray has a book about New Haven, which I think is the best book about New Haven personally. That's just a little editorial comment called City Urbanism and Its End. And he talked about the role that trees and sidewalks played in how people think about the mayoralty. There was a guy named Mayor Frank Rice, I think it's about 100 years ago, and he called himself the sidewalk mayor. He says, the reason I'm the mayor is to get the sidewalks fixed. Then Dick Lee became the mayor during urban renewal. He said, I'm making this the model city. So my job is to get rid of slums, build nice housing, get industry and house, build the city of the future. Although it wasn't that quite neat a division because Dick Lee used to ride in his car all day, checking up on the potholes and the sidewalks and calling it in. Everyone was always scared the mayor would run. You saw a little bit in The Wire. They did that with Mayor Carcetti in the fiction, but he actually did that. He used to ride every block and call into public works. So he did care about sidewalks and stuff. But I think what Doug Ray was getting at is that there are different views, and there's not a right or wrong about this, and it's not absolute one direction or the other. But is it really like Richard Furlow's job to be fielding most of that? And is it Tony Harp's job to be looking at what we're doing with housing policy and the big projects while making sure our staff people are on top of sidewalks? Like, is the mayor the big picture person and the big policy person, or is it a more modest job that gets the nuts and bolts work in each day?
Well, Mayor, I think it's a partnership. I think it works
I
both
think it's
ways.
both. Yeah. One of the things, especially over in the East Shore, we haven't been able to get to their trees because they're trees that are more in the inland part of the city that have much more of a need. They're a little higher on the list, and it's a big problem over there. So what we did, because of their complaints that sort of rose to my level, is to add a tree crew so that we could get more trees done and to put more money into our capital projects so that we could get we can hire outside of the city to do more trees. It's something that people really care about, and so the Board of Alders and I worked on making sure that we had the capacity to do more.
And what Facebook comment? Yes, it is her job, and Alder Furlow is our voice. Alder Furlow, since you've had this job, you've been what now, 6 years in the office, or 8?
Oh no, I always forget. I think it's been 2.5 terms. I came in through a special election.
Oh, you did. Okay. What have you learned that you didn't know? You obviously know a lot here about numbers of trees, what's on the list, and how the roots work and the sidewalks. What have you learned in the position that you didn't know before about trees and sidewalks?
Are you serious? I didn't know anything.
Oh, okay. So this has been school. You got
Absolutely.
your degree now. Alder is going to sidewalk and tree school.
And nobody thinks about it. I had no idea that we had over 200 miles of road in New Haven. who thinks of those numbers? And then when you calculate how much that costs, it's phenomenal. How much sidewalks cost per.
And what do you do as an alder when you want to be responsive to people and they don't agree? Like, what if some people want those trees down because they worry about the wires and them falling, and that other people really love their trees and they don't even want them down when experts say they need to? How do you mediate that?
Well, this is great because we have a parks director, or well, in this case, a tree director, same department, Becky Bombero. And so when there is a disagreement, then she comes out and we meet the constituent or the resident, and she explains what's going on. And so when they hear it from a professional who's able to go through it, then it just makes more sense than me
So
standing
you're
there
saying, listen and bring in someone who knows the rules of the road.
Absolutely.
Alex writes in, Mayor Harper is the most knowledgeable public official in the state of Connecticut. Thank you for your work for all of the city. And you're listening to that on Mayor Monday, where we really diss everybody every minute and like that at 103.5 FM live stream, the New Haven Independent.org. Last week, we finally got movement on that mysterious deal to settle an argument with the Duncan Hotels redeveloper. The old SRO is being made into a swanky university hotel. It got its approvals because it was legally entitled to them. They had a dispute with Unite Here, and it held up plans to have a first floor bar. They sued the city. The Harp administration was in the unusual position of having parts of its government that was on the side of favored the hotel's plan, but then had to defend the zoning board in court. But there was a settlement. It got signed. So what happens next, Mayor Harp?
Oh, well, I guess they're going to finish. They've been working on it. I travel up Chapel Street almost every day.
They're working hard on that, yeah.
They're working hard. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful building. They're going to have, I guess, the bar, right?
So first floor, not just subterranean.
Right.
So there is something kind of romantic about that subterranean bar, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. I used to remember going by there.
It was the one that had the German name, but wasn't a German restaurant. What was it called?
I can't remember. Heidelberg? I don't
Yes,
remember.
Old Heidelberg. There you go.
Yeah.
All right, very good. And then the sushi and all that kind of stuff. It once won at the Advocate, was a former weekly paper. We used to have the best of contest. We had best German restaurant. It won best German restaurant. It was not a German restaurant. It was Italian. So it had a big sign up said not German restaurant.
That's funny.
But so that's on track. 7 new plans for apartments. 238 apartments approved just last week. And Chaplin Orange, Springside Avenue, Crown Court Parking Deck, Crown Howe. Carolyn Cohn, a former city lawyer who represents the developers, said, "My client is building apartments," which is what everybody does in New Haven. Any thoughts on the ward level? What are you hearing about all these new apartments, Richard?
It's exciting. We're just making sure we're developing an affordable housing task force and making sure that these new projects that are coming in will have 8% of affordability for our residents. So, but this is exciting times for New Haven for sure.
And Mayor Harp, last week you were at the groundbreaking Rockview. So we've rebuilt all the. This is the final one, right? There are all sorts of public housing developments in the West Rock neighborhood. I always felt it was odd to cluster them all there. You know, it's sort
And
of
it's not the
neighborhood.
final one either. I think they're going to be tearing down another. Used to be called Oriental Gardens.
Yes, that was always the most controversial back in Marvin Gold's day.
Yeah, and I think that
I didn't know
once
that was still around.
it's still around. It's in the back there. So I think they're going to be. I don't think it's called that anymore.
Well, we've done Brookside, right? We've done Ribicoff. And last week you were there at the groundbreaking, rebuilding the Rockview
right
development. Boy, that part of town is
It's
night
beautiful.
and day what it used to be.
Oh my gosh, it is, because it's going back to the 70s architecture. It was the old brutalist architecture out there. It was ugly. It looked like prisons, And now you go out there and you feel like you're in this vibrant, beautiful neighborhood.
Looks
It's
a little
really
bit like
gorgeous.
the Truman Show, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Valley Street is also going to be redeveloped.
Valley Street,
So,
right.
Yeah.
And that got approved a few months ago. And that's on the West Hills side of the deal.
Right.
Speaking of trees, says Aaron Good, the Urban Resources Initiative, URI, is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. I believe the mayor and possibly the majority leader will be on hand to celebrate the occasion. So this week we didn't get a tough question from Aaron Good. And
All
he's
right.
got like sparklers and things, emojis.
But what I wanted to say about URI and is especially Colleen Dunning Murphy is extraordinary. And when we were concerned about the tree issue, because it did actually come to my desk, she has arborists on staff, and she said that she would loan us an arborist so that we could actually do some of the pruning a little early. I don't know if we took her up on it, but she is such a great partner to the city, and URI is such
And you always see
great
that cruise.
organization.
URI works with kids in the city to teach them how you plant trees, which is a very elaborate process. You got the ball and the canvas that you bring and everything, and they've really done an amazing job all to the city,
And if-
greening our city.
And if you think about the bioswales that we see,
So they do those too,
they do those with Emerge. And,
which are the
Emerge,
people coming out of prison.
right. And so they've helped really build a green
My job on
energy.
this show is to be the acronym translator, like TCB for RAC. Right? I forget them all when the show's over, but I turn on the acronym button.
You're good
so
at it.
You see them with the vests.
Yeah.
And they're and that bioswales, which I never heard of them before, but if you live in New Haven now, you know about bioswales, and they're all over town. They just dig a little bit next to the sidewalk, and that catches the rain, and they
Right.
make them nice with the flowers. And our
Mhm.
fear is always where they're going to become trash receptacles. And I'm not seeing that. I
Not
think
so
they're being
much.
kept pretty well. What are you seeing, Richard, with the bioswales?
No, it's been going well. The residents
And
are
that
caring
stops
for
the
them,
runoff too, so we
taking
don't
the
have to
leaves out. Yeah,
we don't have dirty water
And
going
they're
into our
beautiful.
drinking water. Yeah.
Yep.
And so so URI is definitely. So when is the 25th anniversary? You know anything about that?
I think it's Thursday. Yeah.
All right, so okay, I gotta know about that then too. I hadn't known
You
about
gotta
that.
come. Yeah.
We gotta send somebody because they do great work
Yeah.
and respect. So do you guys know the secret code? There are signs up all over New Haven on people's lawns that
that.
says Yale respect New Haven.
Right.
So people saying, well, what does that mean? There's nothing there's no QR code to go with your phone to say what does it mean. You know what it means?
it's about jobs. It's about good paying jobs. Yale is our largest employer, and it's about hiring New Haven residents.
So Yale
It's about
promised
Yale
to hire
keeping their
1,500, was it, from lower income neighborhoods?
Right,
If I have
and they're
those
not
numbers
even
right?
close. So it's about them keeping their commitment that they
They had
made.
promised they'd have 500 by now. They're only
Right.
250.
We're
Correct?
working together through New Haven Works and hiring those people that are qualified, that meet the standard, and who live in our communities of need.
Are you putting are you helping distribute those signs?
Absolutely.
So now, why do you do that as an alder? You want to help get your constituents employed? Is that the idea?
Well, good paying jobs is a source of empowerment for our residents. One job is enough, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the slogan. Everyone should have one good paying job to be able to care for their families, create a savings, be able to have a movie night. This is things that we all deserve in New Haven and throughout our country.
And what are you hearing, Mayor Hart, from Yale on this? Because they must be a little embarrassed. They said we're going to do it, and then they didn't do it.
Well, I think that they have committed to continue working toward it. We want to see a really deeper commitment. And I'll say, to me, it's also that they're our partner when it comes to our city. We live in the city together. And I think respect is also making sure that the city has enough resources to provide the services for the entire city that it needs.
So you'd like them to pony
So-
up more on their volunteer contributions.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Do
And
they-
to hire more of our people. When we see people hired and people have a good job, we see crime go down in our city.
Absolutely.
People aren't desperate. We see panhandling and all of the things that people are uncomfortable with, property crimes. All of that goes down when people have good paying jobs.
You mentioned the name Bruce Alexander. He was the vice president for State Administration Affairs and University Affairs, or Urban Affairs for the state, for Yale, for a whole generation.
Hmm.
His job was to work with the government, have Yale be part of what's happening in New Haven. And he had all the conversations with the Richard Furloughs of New Haven about what people wanted to see them do. He's been gone for 3 years now. They have not replaced him. Does Yale still have that policy engagement in New Haven? Do you have someone who interacts with you the way that Bruce Alexander used to?
I believe that Lauren,
She's an assistant. She definitely was there before as well.
right.
She's not that same tier of official who has that kind of juice.
Well, there isn't a Bruce Alexander there. There really isn't. And there probably should be.
I'm just wondering in general, because when they decided they were going to be more of a partner with New Haven starting in the early 90s,
Hmm.
they did a couple of big initiatives with the city. They did first the home buyer program, which your neighborhood benefited from quite a bit, if I'm not mistaken, which is a really great program where they give up to $5,000 a year, I think, in down payment assistance over 5 years to help people buy homes in New Haven who work for Yale at all different levels. Then they had the Big Promise New Haven, which is going great guns, the
Mhm.
scholarships for kids. That's something Yale and New Haven did together in the Community Foundation. That was 2009. That was 10 years ago. Does Yale have anything percolating? Any other big plans for how to help the city?
I know that they've put together some resources for community benefits. If we can move forward with paving the runway safety areas at Tweed around home
But
ownership.
what's their role with Tweed besides advocating?
Well, I think that they were going to come up with some dollars
Oh.
for community benefits.
Oh, okay. Like you talked about raising the decibel level at which homes are soundproof.
Right, right. So right now it's at 65, like moving out to about 75, and doing some of the traffic calming there, as well as providing resources for home ownership. Those are
about-
some of the things that were on the list.
What about Yale extending? Have I brought this up with you about Yale extending its home ownership plan to cops and teachers? Have them live in the city? Because I was thinking the math might not be that huge. It might not be a big lift for them.
I would support that. It's a beautiful city, and I would love to have more of our workers actually live in the city.
I think it's time for them to step up with a new initiative.
It's a good point. I think so too.
Okay. J1 Collier says recirculation of opportunities will maximize research. It's basic economics, and Yale's getting all the benefits, lawsuits galore. And then Alex says population in NHV is up. Most growth of any city in Connecticut. I think that's an established fact, since nobody else is growing. That's not a hard one to calculate. Downtown crossing. So we're at the next stage where we're gradually getting rid of the highway that never went anywhere, the Route 34 connector. We're stitching back the hill and downtown gradually. Big job.
Yep.
Exit by exit. What's happening today, assuming we don't get rained on?
Groundbreaking, yay. So it's going to actually start today. So we'll do a groundbreaking, and they'll begin the project.
What are we going to do if it rains?
You
Nervous
know,
Nellie's asking. Oh, no rain till 4. All
It's
right.
not
we're
gonna-
saying-
yeah.
So they knew about the schedule because you do have those connections upstairs. So they're going to wait to rain
they're going to
till the press
wait.
conference takes place. Okay. And is this the Orange Street part?
Yes.
Oh, that's kind of cool. I like the designs on that. It always looks like different kinds of people. To see the idea of cyclists and elderly people walking slowly and bikes going across what the Route 34 connector was on Orange Street and South Orange Street. So we're taking one great step for Apollo 11, one small step on Orange Street.
Yes. Complete streets.
All right. What a pleasure. It goes by so fast. Rich, I'm so glad you came.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being
And
here.
Mayor Harp, your fellow Sunday school teacher alum.
Yes.
Mayor Harp, I love this idea that weekly you're bringing your partners, people you work with in government, to make New Haven happen on Monday, Mayor Monday. Please keep it up if you feel like it.
Sure.
Because I love it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's fun.
Thanks, everyone, for your questions. And thanks for tuning in to Mayor Monday today in WNHH. I want to thank Gateway Community College, Birch and Moses PC, for providing financial support for today's program. I would have liked to have been in your Sunday school classes. I thought they were pretty good. Thanks to Harry Droz, the Miracle Man, but gets us on all these social media platforms so that universes I've never even imagined in a science fiction novel get to tune into Mayor Monday. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.